I hear no objection. It is so decided.
Gavelling a decision to move the IGN process, which began as far back as 2007, to the next session. One that includes a commitment endorsed by heads of state last year to instill new life in the discussions on the reform of the Security Council. But frustration at the lack of progress was palpable.
To this end, genuine text-based negotiations should commence, as this is the only way to achieve the commitments made in 2005 World Summit Outcome Document and the UN 75 Declaration. Furthermore, in our view, for the fulfillment of the Common African Position, we have no choice but to commence with text-based negotiations. We believe that the African heads of state will not provide us with a common position if their intention was not for us to find means to realize it within the process provided for in the General Assembly.
The technical rollover is an annual decision taken through consensus by member states that essentially moves the negotiations from one session to the next, in this case from the 75th to the 76th session. But diplomats speaking on background have pointed to China and Russia in the main as seeking to block efforts to move the negotiations, which have now dragged on for more than 13 years, to a text-based phase, which could lead to an outcome that actually reforms the Council. It's a frustration that Germany has spearheaded among a group called the G4, which includes Brazil, Japan and India, that all seek permanent representation in a reformed council.
I have to admit, we didn't get what the South African colleagues said, that we want to have text-based negotiations. Several countries that ask for consensus, that ask that everybody agrees. If you ask that, it is clear that you don't want to have a result, because when you change, when you reform, of course, those who have right now a privileged position may have to cede that position. There will be others also represented, and there are some who don't like it. But the provisions are that in the end you have to vote, you have a 2/3 majority, and we have to get this notion of open debates, this notion of the possibility to vote into the discussions of the intergovernmental negotiations, and to have these discussions now in the open.
Support for the African common position of 2 permanent seats and 5 additional non-permanent seats has grown, but the consensus-driven approach received a fair amount of scrutiny.
Consensus should not be taken as the only goal. Justice is at times even more important. We should try to work harder to get consensus that is also substantive, that progress can be made. This is where Nigeria stands. We want to join consensus, but also urge colleagues to appreciate that consensus cannot be the end in itself.
With the credibility of a council last expanded in 1963 at stake.
The lack of permanent African representation and underrepresentation in the non-permanent category of Africa adversely affects the Council's ability to adequately address matters of peace and security on the continent. It is therefore of fundamental importance that we address this historical injustice.
The 76th session of the General Assembly commences on September 14th. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.